also, I would like to take advantage of this opportunity to thank, I know that there are a lot of people here who supported us when we were in jail, who supported us before in our struggle and after being in jail, and they continue this work. I also want to thank the Committee of Free Unions, CTFU, for sponsoring this conference. Albert Schenker Institute, the International Lady Garment Workers Union, which also has always been very supportive of our movement of independent workers. The National Endowment for Democracy, which has always been beside the strugglers for Cuban democracy, and also the organizations that make possible this conference. You can't hear me. No, it's not very clear. I recall 2 years ago when I was in Washington, I felt more depressed than I am now. Now I feel a little bit happier because I can say that all of my brothers are out of jail, at least those from Black Spring. Fortunately, Black Spring is passed into history, but we have to remember that there still remain many prisoners of conscience in Cuba, many unknown people included. There are many young people who have gone to jail because of danger, alleged danger that they represented. Someday a study will be made because these young people, many of them are in jail today, but it's because of their ideas, because they don't agree with communism, which is still dominating after 52 years, stamping underfoot our people. There are other prisoners such as Rafael Ibarra, who's been 16 years. He was condemned to 20 years. He was accused of a crime which he never committed, actually, and I doubt, because I knew him personally. I knew him before he was arrested, and I met him in prison, and others who met him know his human quality. Ibarra is not a violent man. He's not a terrorist. So those 20 years that they've given him for that reason, the 16 years that he served already is too much. And many others, I don't recall all the names, but I think that we have to continue advocating in favor of these workers. I'd like to give you some of the history of independent unions in Cuba, as was well stated. At the middle of the 90s, I militated in an organization, Harmony, which within this movement, there was a group of port workers, and we had the idea at that time to create an independent union. All of this was motivated by the struggles which took place in the socialist area, inspired with the example of because most of us had that idea, which we didn't know, what was the union organizations around the world. In Cuba, we only knew about the World Federation of Workers, the communist federations, and we had little knowledge of what was going on in the CMT, and but we did this with the ideals of Cuba moving toward democracy and establishing a rule of law, and the unions also could enjoy democracy. Democracy which was so lacking, and which Cuba formerly had, although not for very long, but Cuba really did enjoy democracy before, when the Constitution of the 40s was a very prosperous opportunity. Unions, free unions, despite the disagreements that they had of different trends, but at least We achieved many of the demands for our workers, and René is here. He's one of those who struggled during that period. Fortunately, we have him here. He's living history of what free unions were in our country. I think then later we had Batista, unfortunately, which was a dark period in our history, but not as dark as the one that we've gone through after 1959. And I'm a victor of Batista. My father was murdered in 1958. I recognize that it was a very negative dictatorship, but Batista is nothing in comparison with what we have now, much as others will come who will prove that I wasn't that bad. Well, not only the dictators that we had in Cuba, I think in all of Latin America, there have been a lot of dictators, but they're nothing in comparison with Castro. Pinochet said his dictatorship was nothing in comparison with Castro's dictatorship. We've had to put up with that for so many years. We know about it. And, well, this idea of free unions started in Havana. This movement developed great strength, and we had many members at that time. There was a great deal of enthusiasm among people. People joined with pleasure. They thought that there would be a change as occurred in the socialist bloc, when unfortunately that was not the case. This movement, this union, was discovered by state security at the end of the 90s. That's when, in December, it was being done secretly because we thought we would carry out a general strike on the docks. There was a group of unions today. Some of them are not here. They've died, as is the case of Manuel Membrique Zulueta, who came into exile. Also, Lázaro Puesta Collazo, who died, and Rafael Gutierrez Santo. We don't know. I know he disappeared. He was the first general secretary of that movement. Another, Lázaro Puesta, but Lázaro did. Now, this is when there started to arise the different groups. We created other names. Several attempts at unity were established. Then the CDC was democratic groups. There were some 60 different groups created, but it was positive because this moved forward the idea. When it was revealed, I think it was the only independent union created in Cuba, because after that, the regime didn't allow it. And in this union, we had workers. At that time, I was working as a restaurant worker. We gave support economically to them. There are a lot of people involved, and state security attacked them. At the time that they were arrested, I was here in the U.S. It was the first time I came here in 1981. When I arrived on the 7th of July, they had arrested them. And international solidarity was so great at that time. They gave tremendous support to them. The president and they had to just expel these people from their work. They wanted to condemn them, and I'm sure that had there not been a reaction internationally, as there was at that time, they would have condemned them. Then later on, Rafael, I believe, was arrested for about a year, and then afterwards he had to go into exile because persecution was terrible against him and against everybody. I wasn't the head at that time of the group, but I was an activist. The center where we worked, Carol and I, was where we held our meetings. It was even searched by the security. I think it's the only workplace searched by state security. That was for about 20 years now. We've been involved in this struggle, and perhaps many people think that nothing has been accomplished. I do think a lot has been accomplished. As I already stated, we have martyrs of this union struggle. I think these people who struggled and died, one day we will have to recognize them. They had to go into exile, many of them forced by the circumstances. None of them would have left the country, of course, as we've all had to leave now. I was practically removed by a Spanish Air Force plane. They were in such a hurry to get rid of me that Spain had to send a plane to pick us up. And I was told, either you leave or you go back to jail. I didn't want to leave, and I'd like to go back now. I repent having made that decision. I admire greatly our brothers who have decided to remain there, because I think it was an honorable decision, a very courageous decision, and which is lacking at this time, because Cuba needs leaders, people who've suffered, people who have taken one step forward and remain there. This is an example. This is a thorn in the foot of the regime. I think that all this is positive, what we've done. A totalitarian regime such as the one in Cuba, many of our brothers who are here from Latin America perhaps don't have a true view of what is occurring in Cuba, and I understand that because they live in a different context. They've also suffered. They've had to suffer horrible dictatorships, which have been very unjust and criminal even, and violating human rights. But I think as a Cuban regime, there's no other. The totalitarian regime in Cuba, I see it's a totally totalitarian regime. It opens up no room for freedom. In Cuba, there isn't even a minimum remainder of freedom, and that's what we've done over 20 years. We've gained room. The ladies in white with their dignity, very courageous women, have opened up the streets. The streets belong to Fidel. No, the streets belong to the Cuban people. They belong to the ladies in white who won them over through their courage, their activism, our activism. They go out to the street to demonstrate. Even though they beat them, it doesn't matter. And I think this is proof. It's very easy to go out to support a regime who has all weapons in their favor. Anybody can do that. But you have to go out against that regime. Some of the activists do that today. I know, but we have limited time.